George Kilpatrick Inspiration for the Nation, celebrating people we feel good about. So I'm so glad to meet Dr. Tatiana Parker. What? Doctor? What?
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about it. So Tatiana Parker has some professional work. She's Director of Constituent Services and grant making for Senator Rachel May of New York State Senate. But that's another story. We first met Tatiana because she came through the Syracuse Educational Opportunity Center to rebuild, to restart, and now, how many years later? When did we first meet?
Oh, wow. I think that may have been 2018.
So this 5 years later, and look at you. Right. So congratulations. Welcome to the program. Let's start back to the journey of how you first began.
So how I first began in this program, or
when you first began the journey, let's go back to EOC to recap.
Yes. Oh, wow. So we're going way back in the time. So yes, I attended SUNY EOC in about, what was it, 2003. And at that time, I came to EOC because I actually had failed out of SUNY OCC due to, a relationship that was in at the time that was pretty toxic, definitely emotionally, and this is mentally abusive, right? So I went to EOC because I knew I needed some kind of skill set to bring in more money so I could live, comfortably. And so I completed that program. I went for medical billing and coding. After that, I went back to OCC, completed my associates, rolled right over into SUNY Oswego, where I graduated with my BA in political science. 3 years later, I went back for my master's in social and public policy. And I swear I thought I was done there, George. I thought I have the master's, we're done. But sometimes in life, it's your mantle is brought to you.
Ooh, okay.
So I'm just walking along, minding my business, and I start getting these little signs about, let's go, what about doctoral study? And it was like the good one on one shoulder, the bad one on the other. And I'm just arguing with myself, like, no, why am I doing this? Why do I want to go back to school? But more and more signs appeared that said, you need to do this and you need to do this now. So I enrolled in 2021, just a year into the pandemic. And I said, why not? Let's just go ahead and do it. So I'm proud to say I went through that process. I made it through by the grace of God. And I sit here before you now as Dr. Tatiana, recently minted as of December 2023.
I mean, like, this just happened.
Just happened, yes.
Wow. Right. And so what was your research about?
Wow. Okay. So my research studies Black women from areas of Black concentrated poverty and how their connections and their social capital play into their upward economic mobility.
And so what did you find out?
Okay, so there was research done by some professionals in the field, I think late 2022, early 23, that says social capital, which is, if you think about economic capital, it's the money's used to get goods and services. Well, social capital is how your social circles and connections functions as capital to get you certain things you may need and want, right? So there was a study done that said connections to people dissimilar from you are the single most form of social capital that leads to upward economic mobility.
Okay.
So when I did my research, I asked Black women who had experience living in 13202, 03, 04, and 05. You started here, but you ended up here. How did your connections factor into it? And consistently, each woman I talked to said, no matter, the spaces that were most impactful were their workplaces and their places of education. Think about SUNY EOC and the mentoring that I got there, right? So those people that they meet in those spaces introduce them to individuals who have backgrounds dissimilar of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And meeting those people were able to give them information, access to opportunities, um, and sometimes emotional comfort that help them continue on their journey to upward mobility.
Mm. And so, aren't you part of that study?
Absolutely.
Tell me how you did
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah, because, and I don't want to get too academic heavy, but I did this. And this is what brings Black women, I think, to academia in the first place, is
Okay.
because they have, they want to engage in some kind of advocacy,
Yeah.
right? They want to tell our stories because Black women's stories are absent from the literature. And so that is a part of what brought me to St. John Fisher to do the doctorate. Um, and because I have lived experience, I had to be very careful about the
Mhm.
research methodology that I choose and to be able to journal and make sure that the experiences that I'm getting from the data aren't my own.
Right.
But I use a methodology. It's a type of phenomenology called interpretive phenomenological analysis,
Mhm.
which says, yeah, the researcher is a part of this group.
Mm.
It's okay. So depending on the method, it's okay to have the same lived experience, but it was very empowering
And so
to
the
meet other women who went through the same thing.
and so the lesson then is what?
The lesson is, depending on the stakeholder we're talking about, but I'll talk to other women like myself who are trying to elevate. The key is to get out there. And get out there doesn't necessarily mean physically, right? We have social media now. LinkedIn is an awesome place. If you haven't created a LinkedIn profile and join those groups on LinkedIn to meet other people who may live in different places or have different positions within the social structure that you can help and who can help you, I highly suggest that. But in recent years, we as people have been inclined to have friendships and connections with those solely like ourselves.
Mm.
And that closes off the power of what a network can really do,
Yeah.
right? But it does serve a purpose to be around people like ourselves. It brings comfort, it brings reinforcement. But if you're looking for access to different information that other people don't, or different opportunities, you have to be comfortable and get in the spaces where people who are dissimilar to you, are.
How did you feel? How did you get the confidence to keep going and to know that you could be that person?
To be one person to
To be
finish
the
or
person you are today. Like if you're looking
oh
at Tatiana from 2003 to
yeah.
Tatiana to 2024, you know, how do you is this the vision you had for yourself?
Not at all. Not at all. The funny thing is, I think I heard a phrase that said, "Man plans, God laughs."
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
no, I didn't imagine myself here. I'm very pleased that I am here. I just knew that there was more for me. Um, and that is a concept that came up in my data as well. For the women who have elevated, they could not describe it. They've come from, some of them had parents that were addicts,
Mhm.
some of them have been homeless, but there was always this little passion or a calling or um maybe faith or something that propels you forward. And that's what it was for me. I knew that I was more than my circumstance, that I had more to offer, and I wanted more. And so I just put one foot in front of the other and things just continued to manifest, doors continued to open up, and I found myself here.
You talked to us earlier about way back in the day about a relationship, and for relationships are tricky, right? I mean, because and I wanted to say something. Well, here's what I want to say. So a lot of us are in relationships that we we know are hindering us, but then we can't seem to get out of them, or we don't know how. I shouldn't say not us, not me, but I'm just saying some of us, I should say, are in these kinds of relationships that are hindering them, but they can't seem to figure out how to get out of them, or to know that there is more. And so are there any learning things that you've uncovered, or how much was relationship a part of this journey for some of the women that you spoke to, if at all?
Interesting. So we have relationships everywhere, right? But I think specifically you're talking about romantic relationships. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
and the impact of that on all of this.
Oh yeah, matters of the heart are definitely difficult. And there was just one respondent that mentioned, a boyfriend at the time, but even that didn't really hinder her progress much. As far as my experience, there were times that I knew I should have left, but did not. It, in fact, wasn't until, those on again, off again relationships, kick out, move back. It was during one of those, influx periods. And I was actually at OCC doing summer courses. And I kicked him out. And if you know anything about summer courses, they're shortened, right? A regular semester is 15 weeks. This was 5 weeks. I took 2 or 3 classes and got A's and B's when during a 15-week semester, I was barely getting C's. So I think something happens in our lives sometimes, if we choose to pay attention to it, that shows us, this is not meant for you. If we decide to listen to it or not is a whole another conversation. And one thing about abusive relationships is that one item out of their playbook is isolation, right? Isolation from friends, isolation from family, isolation from anybody that can have influence. And if you think about that, your connections mean everything. So if you can't look at your significant other and say, what I want my daughter to be with someone like that, what I want my mother to be with someone like that, what I want my son to be with someone like that. What's good enough for your kids is good enough for you too. Okay.
And Tatiana, I'm so proud of you. I wanted to give you a space to celebrate and to encourage other people, but other women in particular, other Black women in particular, who might be on a journey. And I know you said something to me about Black women in academia, and I wanted to know what you wanted to say about that as part of your journey.
Okay. So a little bit of a disclaimer. I'm going to tell it how it is, but I don't want any of your listeners to, if they're considering higher ed, to be frightened, but just go in with eyes wide open. I've always heard from people that doctoral studies were hard, but that is such an abstract conversation. That's like, saying marriage is hard. Okay, I can do hard work. Right. I can do hard work. Doctoral studies will break you down to build you up. And you definitely need a network. You need a solid group of people to talk to around you. So like I said, the Lord actually led me to doctoral studies. And I had an idea of what I wanted to study. I think that I came to the academy thinking that it was a safe space because we had a similar interest, right? I
Right.
want to know information. I want to know how to do research. You know how to do it. So we're going to all galvanize around knowledge and skill building. That's not necessarily the case oftentimes. You know, academia, whether you're teaching in academia, it's primarily a white space. And even though there are more Black women getting doctoral degrees, it's primarily, you know, a white male space. And you have a committee who you are literally beholden to. They have the key to if you proceed or not. And there were often times where I had to fight a little bit harder than I thought to justify my topic of study. And I think this needs to be talked about because the Journal of Blacks in Higher Education said in 2021, I believe, that Black women are leading African American degrees, period. I think in 2021, 70% of all master's degrees went issued to African Americans went to Black women. 60% of the doctoral degrees to Black people went to Black women.
Mm.
So we're coming into the institutions, right? And I think now we're seen as a commodity in certain spaces. There was a story about a university who targeted Black women in their marketing, but kept them on the wheel. So they ended up with more student debt than other white students in the institution.
When you say kept them on the wheel, what do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is like when you have your dissertation and you go through, you write one chapter, it's typically 5 chapters. You write chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The committees would say, oh, you have to change this chapter and keep doing revisions. So the students would have to pay for another semester.
Oh,
Would
for the
delay the
instruction,
time that
yeah.
they, delay their proposals. So they had to pay for another semester. Right? And this is documented. I'm not going to say the name of the university, but there is litigation on that issue. I just want, for those who are pursuing doctoral studies or have family members who are, you're never going to fully know what they go through. Stick with them. If you have friends in doctoral studies, check in on them. Really, it's hard. And if you are a doctoral student, besides developing the necessary time management skills, don't take on too much else. Don't be afraid to ask for help. I know as a Black woman, sometimes we don't want to, but this will test you. Ask for help. Innovate how you do things. If you have a family, get out that crock pot, get out that air fryer, order your groceries instead of going grocery shopping. You have to be very resourceful to do this. Stick close to, the creator of your belief. That's the only reason why I got through. That's God.
I like the way you said that.
Whoever you pray to, stick close because, working in higher ed and being a student, there are issues with underrepresentation, our intersectionality of being Black women and maybe coming from different socioeconomic statuses. Even a lack of mentorship can really culminate into a very difficult experience, but you can get over it.
You can't get over it. Well, any parting advice for people who are on their path to whatever goal it is that they're trying to reach?
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Okay.
You have to, use social media to your advantage. If there are potential doctoral students, there are several wonderful Facebook pages that really helped me get through. There are writing groups. If you're exploring a career in a different area, look up on Facebook to see if Facebook has like a group for that particular area or that particular career field. We have to really start leveraging this technology for our social connections to the extent of the technology's ability, not to ours. We have to grow and use our resources so we can lift all the boats.
Tatiana Parker, Dr. Tatiana Parker, a great friend of the program who we first met as an example of the work that the Syracuse SUNY EOC is doing in our community. And look at her now. And so shout out to the EOC, but also shout out to you because you did it, girl. You did it.
Thank you. We did it, George. I had a community of Black women who refused to let me lose. I love all of y'all.
There you go. And good luck. Somebody we feel good about, Dr. Tatiana Parker, here on Inspiration for the Nation. And by the way, did you pledge? Didn't you just go ahead?
Yes, I am. I'm a Spring 23 initiate of the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated.
Inspiration for the Nation.